Barefoot shoe movement, minimalist shoes. This is going to be a discussion about how I arrived at this, okay? How I arrived at these. These are awesome, handmade, custom shoes made from a last built to mimic my foot by Chris Lehman up in the Pacific Northwest. I'm super stoked with these. As a child, when I first started walking, I was tripping over myself. I was severely pigeon-toed, had braces for my legs. It's like Forrest Gump. Then I had those shoes that I guess they had like a spring in the heel, and when you walked, it would correct your feet. And, I did everything the other kids did, but the doctors told me I really shouldn't be doing that, or I couldn't do it. They told me to wear a boot with a heel. And I did that. And everything was ridiculous. And I constantly was twisting my ankles and tearing ligaments in my ankles. I didn't realize how severe it was. I mean, by the time I was 8, I could ace bandage wrap my ankle better than the nurse at school. And I wasn't 100% accurate, or accurate's the wrong word, but honest with the Marine Corps when I enlisted either, because I had these issues. I didn't say anything about it because I just wanted to make that happen. And the Marine Corps definitely made my issues worse because this is what we wore back then. It's not super flexible, although you'll see this is more flexible than some of these other work boots I had later. As a kid, I wore Vans and Converse. I didn't wear Vans till high school, but I grew up wearing Chuck Taylors mainly, Keds, that sort of thing. But I want to talk about this. Now, one of the things with the Corps was you might see that this heel here is worn. It's a hard, super hard rubber. That heel is worn because they trained us to march like that, to drive your heels into the ground. That is not good for you. They don't do that anymore. Matter of fact, these were my spit shines back then, and they're not what they used to look like. These used to be best pair of spit shines on the base. But I want you to notice that you'll see that my foot used to overhang the sole. If I put my feet on the bottom of this sole, my feet are wider than the sole. But you'll also notice how narrow the toe box is. This is the issue with most shoes. Most of the shoes out there, it's about fashion. So they have a narrow toe box. If you got narrow feet, it doesn't bother you. But if you're like me and your toes are wide across the top, that's a problem. If you look at your feet now and you're an older person, you're over 30, and your toes are bent in, that's from your shoes. That's not good. It's not healthy for you. So this was the time period where I probably did the most damage to my body and my feet. It was during the service. And then when I got out of the service, I started wearing work boots. This is a pair of Danners that I bought. So this was called the Job Boss. And I got this in the 90s. Excuse me. I may be a little congested. I've been sick for the last few days, so if I don't sound right, I apologize. This boot originally came with a white sole. Now, not the modern white soft sole. The sole that came on this was basically hard as a rock. It was a Vibram sole, no flexibility. Matter of fact, you really got to force this to even flex it. You can't flex this very much. This is about the 4th sole that I had put on this boot, and I would have them put that softer foam and then a Vibram sole mini lug on the bottom. If you look at this, you can see here that my foot also went on beyond the sole. But that toe box was pretty narrow. Not good for you. They stopped making this boot. It's very thick leather, hard to break in. That was a big complaint with people with this boot. Danner then came out with the Bull Run, which is essentially, it's very similar to this design, but the leather was thinner, easier to break in. It came with that white sole, but it was much softer, and it wore out very quick. This was the second. I've had 3 pairs of these. Each one had at least 2 soles. Some of them had 3 before I blew something out on the leather. This is the second sole on this pair, and I would actually have them make these thicker. Now, the reason I did this, and same thing with this Danner, was because in my shop here, it's concrete. And so you want that foam if you're staying on your feet all day. But you'll notice as well, with all these shoes, they've got a heel rise to them. The heel rise is right here. It's very typical. Most shoes have this. It's for comfort. But it's actually not good for you. We'll get into the whole barefoot shoe thing once I get to these over here. So, again, I started developing this pain in my feet and a bunion on my right foot, which actually was probably more like a gout thing, more than anything. And I've solved that. That's a whole other story. But you can see how narrow that toe box is. So after my feet hurting all the time and going between my work boots and a pair of sneakers for comfort, I finally discovered the Barefoot shoe thing. Now, before I even get into that, I do want to just talk about these boots over here. This is a pair of WESCOs, and I bought these off the shelf on Melrose. This is their Boss, I believe, engineer boot. This is a great freaking boot. Still feels fantastic. I can walk around in these all day and I can stand in them, but that heel is a thing. And this boot actually saved my foot. I was T-boned in a motorcycle accident, and the guy hit me right on this boot, and I had the frame of the bike on this side and actually bent the frame of the bike and did not destroy my foot because there's a steel shank in here. It's a very heavy duty, great boot. I will keep this boot in case I decide to ride motorcycles again, or if I want to dress up all fancy like. But again, to be in them all day with a heel, really not the best thing for you, regardless of what anybody else says. You got the old school logger boots. You know, it's the same sort of thing. Now, one of the issues I've had in the past, you're going to say, well, you're complaining about the narrow toe. Why didn't you order a wide boot? This demonstrates why, because this is a wide. Look how close this is here with the laces. The thing about the wide boots is they increase the whole interior volume of the shoe, not just the toe box. All I need was the wide toe box. You'll see here, see how thin that looks? You see how wide that is? That's all I need. I don't need this whole volume there. For these boots to fit me correct, I got to wear pads underneath my foot to lift my foot up enough so that this lace issue isn't a problem. I had WESCO trying to make me a pair of boots. 3 times I sent those boots back. They could never get them right for my feet. It's a problem. So when I was trying to solve my foot issues, I finally discovered there was this thing, the barefoot shoe movement, minimalist shoes. What is that? Well, that's zero rise, like a pair of sneakers. Nothing to it. Super flexible is what you want. And you want a wide toe box. Now, out of all the shoes I own, when it comes to sneakers, these Keds have the widest toe box, but they're still not wide enough. I can wear these pretty comfortably, but after a while it does start to bother me. Then I discovered other companies. These are Lems. Fantastic. All right, fantastic. Nice and wide here. Zero rise, super flexible. I love this leather one. I liked it so much that I didn't want to wreck it by wearing it to work, because I like the way it looks with my clothes. Fashion is a thing. I understand that. Aesthetics. You want to pronounce that word correctly, by the way. It's aesthetics. A-E-S-T-H. Aesthetics, not aesthetics. Aesthetics. It's a pet peeve of mine. And I'll pronounce like 3 or 4 more words throughout this video totally incorrectly, and you can goof on me about that. Anyway, I like this shoe so much that I bought this version of it because it was cheap, and I've been wearing this to work lately. But I can tell you, it's only been a few months, and they're starting to get a little bit worn. They're not going to last very long, which is why I need a decent pair of heavy-duty work boots with these principles built into them. I picked up these. I don't like the color combination, but they were the only ones I could find that fit me. These are a size 10. They are waterproof. These are my waterproof hiker, and these are super comfortable. Again, super flexible and wide toe. You guys know these are the Vivos. Love them. This led me to this. Now, before finding this shoe, I was going to buy the tools, talk to my buddy Chad about it. We were thinking about making our own boots because we could not find a shoe that was designed around our feet correctly. And Chad's been having a hard time finding people to even build him shoes. Just want to show you how flexible these are. I misspoke in my last video. This is not a tractor tire, it's a lawnmower tire tread. Chris is a pretty cool dude. He's very specific about how you measure your feet, and he builds a custom last for each of your feet, and then he builds the shoe around it. I needed a boot for work because I mean, just look at this right here. I'll be wearing sneakers out all day long. I'm going to wreck these. Look how long I've still had these. Decades, over 30 years. Same thing with these things. The problem with these shoes, this shoe, this shoe, this shoe, this shoe, is there's no flexibility. People think you need this high arch support and everything else, but all you're doing is you're putting a cast on your foot. You're walking around, you're clunking around with a cast on your foot. It is not good for your feet. I don't care what anybody says. I'm not going to argue with you. If you think you need to have it, do it. But I will tell you this. When I wore these shoes for years, decades, my whole entire life, I had flat feet. Since going to the Minimalist, thin sole, wide toe box shoe, my foot has developed an arch. You don't need arch supports. This is anecdotal. This is my experience. But if you walked around barefoot all the time, you're going to be a lot healthier. So you want to be as barefoot as possible in your footwear. This is just what I've found to be true for myself. I think most of you out there who also have a wide toe box or a wider foot are going to find the same thing. Once you start researching the barefoot shoe movement, minimalist shoes, and you really get into it, go down the rabbit hole on that, like I did, like I do with everything. Because I got the time, no kids that I know about, and I'm not married. I got no distractions. I can look at anything. You start seeing what people's feet look like all over the planet that don't wear shoes. All their toes are splayed out the way they should be. There's 26 bones in your feet. We were designed, the human body was designed to run around barefoot over uneven terrain. And the way it works is, when you're walking on that terrain and your feet are manipulating over all this uneven ground, it sends a message to your brain. Your brain then sends a message to the rest of your body, your core in particular, so your body does the right things to remain upright while you're navigating that terrain. And all that happens without you thinking about it. Split second. Once you start wearing shoes, all of a sudden, that message is interrupted. And now you have to pay more attention to your surroundings and figure out what to do. Interesting how that works. So my friends are like, they're goofing on me, like, go back to the Danners, like, these look goofy. I understand that, but because I was a kid growing up with goofy looking corrective shoes, I think that kind of maybe formed my personality to a certain extent. I mean, it taught me at an early age that I've just got to be comfortable with who I am and what I do, what I wear and all that. I don't really care what anybody else thinks. Of course, I'm from New Jersey, so that's kind of a natural thing. Those of us from New Jersey really don't care what you think. All that matters is what works, and this works. I'm just super stoked with this. Now look, have you had a pair of shoes made for yourself before? If you haven't, get ready to balk at the price of it, okay? Because you're talking close to $1,000 for a custom pair of shoes to be made. And you're gonna be like, wow, that's a lot of money. Okay, yeah. But how much money did I spend on all these other shoes over the years that wore out on me? And these aren't cheap either. These are $200. Well, this one here is actually. I think this one comes in at like under $180. I believe when I bought this, I think these were close to $300 back in the 90s, something like that. Over $225, $230, something like that. Of course, $230 30 years ago it's like $5,000 now, thanks to our government. Also, touching on that, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not a leftist. You do what you want to do. But I'm just trying to explain why I arrived at this. This has been the most comfortable boot I've ever put on from day one. It really doesn't need any break-in. Chris will balk at that. He'll say, oh, you got to break it in. And it's true. But I've done 2-3 mile walks in these in the last couple of days with no issues whatsoever. I've manipulated them down, to make them flex a little bit more. And these will last me for the rest of my life. And they're resolable. So I understand if people might think they're goofy looking, or that's what my toes do. That's why they're shaped like this. If you had a pair of shoes made by Chris, they're not necessarily going to look like that. So you don't have to be scared by that. If your toes are more, matter of fact, Chris's shoes look more natural. I asked him about that. It's because he's got that goofy toe that sticks. If you got that toe that sticks out beyond your big toe, by the way, you could always cut that off. You could cut your toe down and then just tattoo a toenail on there to make it look normal. That's what I would do if I had that toe. But anyhow, if you do have that extended center toe, then your toe is going to appear to be more rounded. And that might be most of the population, by the way. And maybe that's part of the reason why that is for that purpose. Look, there's different purposes for a narrow toe in the front. If you look at cowboy boots, a lot of the reason for that was just getting into stirrups. The heel comes in handy for a lot of different purposes out in the real world. It also came from riding horses, by the way. Matter of fact, riding horses is the reason why men wear pants. And it's interesting too. You see a lot of people wearing like military clothing, walking around. Everybody wants to look tough. Men want to look like men, and there's nothing manlier than the military. So back in the day, men wore skirts just like all the women did, right? Togas, that sort of thing. But anybody who rode a horse they had to figure out pants, because your legs flop over to the side of the horse, and you don't want any chafing. So if you wanted to look tough and like a man, you were wearing pants. That's how that whole thing happened. I think it's probably much the same thing with the shoes. That's a guess on the shoes there, but it does make logical sense. Anyhow, this is how, starting with this and all the damage, it's funny. When I got out of the Corps, it was, I got out of the medical because of my ankles, but the truth was I was getting in other trouble, and I didn't like it. I was pissed off, and a bunch of jerks in there. I just didn't want to be around a bunch of jerks. So I figured out a way to get out of it. And they made me sign this piece of paper saying I couldn't get medical or anything, which is not what they should have done. And I'm friends with one of my drill instructors now, and he tells me all the time, he's like, Mike, you became a Marine. He said, you passed the physical. You got through Paris Island. You went through infantry school at Camp Pendleton. Paris Island is Paris Island, but that's where I did boot camp. Infantry school at Camp Pendleton, all the mountains and everything else. He says the problems you had were caused by the training. So he keeps trying to talk me into going to the VA and seeing if I could get something out of that. But it's no joke. I mean, this is a resole, but look at all the wear on there. I probably only wore these for less than a year and got all that wear on them after the resole. That's what's crazy. That heel thing is no joke. What they were doing to us back then just caused all kinds of damage, not just to me, but probably hundreds of thousands of Marines. Pretty wild. The new shoes today, they're rough out, and they're more like a sneaker. And when you see them marching now, they're pretty much landing flat foot, which is another thing. Running shoes, anything that has a heel, it tends to make you want to drive your heel into the pavement and then roll forward. And that is not how we're supposed to be walking. Watch a baby walk. They're walking on the balls of their feet. They're landing, and they're mostly staying on the balls of their feet. The way you want to walk is you want to land here or here and keep going. If you're walking slow, it makes more sense to land flat-footed. But you really don't want to be driving your heel into the pavement. Running, hiking, walking, anything. That just sends a shock wave right up your body. If you're going to get into the barefoot shoe thing, the minimalist shoe thing, you have to relearn how to walk. Sounds crazy. Another thing about the heel. When you've got a heel on, what's happening to your legs, the back of your leg muscles, your Achilles tendon, your calf muscle, everything? You're shortening that. And what happens if you wear a heel all the time, that's very short. It actually becomes uncomfortable to be flat-footed. So by going to a shoe that has a zero rise, well, what happens then? Well, that lengthens your Achilles tendon. It lengthens the muscles on the back of your legs. That's more natural. That's the way it's supposed to be. So there's people out there, they're going to say, hey, I need to have a heel. I love the heel. I love a high arch support. I love all that stuff. Makes them feel good when they're on their feet. They never consider the fact that they're walking around in a cast, totally unflexible. And how many of those people do you know that also complain about back problems, lower back problems, knee issues? How many of those people have had surgeries? My sister's had a couple foot surgeries because of bunions. Look at women's feet in those high heels. Oof. How bad is it when you... I'm just going to say it anyhow. I am saying this for humor. I'm wrecking the joke here, but you meet this beautiful woman. She's great. She takes her feet off, and it's a freaking horror show. All bunions and everything else. That's not attractive. Let me get into Elmer Batters here for a second. Look up Elmer Batters. He was like a foot fetish photographer, and it's interesting because he has a Bible of foot. He's got like this sketch where he talks about and notates what he thinks is the perfect foot on a female, and it's always a nice thing to the toes, not the creepy toe. Sorry if I'm making you feel bad. A high arch, relatively small foot, and that's what he photographed, and it does look better in images. It's just kind of interesting. So by wearing pointy toe shoes with a heel, you're just destroying your feet, not just the aesthetics of your foot, but everything else that comes up from there. It's going into the rest of your body. Any sort of heel rise is bad for your lower back. It's bad for the muscles in your legs. That's just how it is. I'm not telling you the whole world necessarily needs to start going to minimalist shoes. I am telling you, if you've had an issue in the past, little momentary break there. I am telling you that if you've had issues in the past, or if you're having issues now, if your feet hurt at the end of the day, if you have a narrow shoe, if you've got bunions, if your feet are squeezed together, if you're having lower back problems, if you're having knee problems, just start doing internet searches for the barefoot shoe movement, minimalist shoes. Educate yourself. I'm just here to help. Every video I have, whether it's my Astrovan or the bicycle stuff or anything else, it's just about helping other human beings out, because I've been figuring this all out on my own. Right? Nobody's in my life trying to help me with this stuff. This is me figuring it out, and I've discovered that it works for me. This has totally changed my life. I understand. Again, you might not like this. You might think this is goofy looking. It is. I comically call this my lumberjack clown shoe. That's what it looks like. I don't know what a lumberjack clown should look like. What kind of balloons he would sell. They'd probably be goofy looking balloons, huh? Do they make hatchet balloons or chainsaw balloons or the plaid balloons maybe? That'd be interesting. Maybe I should dress up as a lumberjack clown for Halloween. Anyhow, that's the story. That's why I have these goofy looking shoes. I'm partially doing this so the next time one of my friends goofs on me, I can just send them a link to this video so they can watch this and understand how I got here. Again, look how if you can't do this with the shoes you're wearing every day, start looking into it, because you can't do that with this. I can't even bend. I'm a strong dude. Okay, here we go. That's about as much as I can bend it, and that takes a lot of strength. That's ridiculous. You can't bend this at all. That's not bending. That's not going to move. It's a cast. You're putting a heavy. Look, oh my God. I didn't even think of that for this video. Let me jump into another thing. I know this is totally unprofessional, all over the place. U.S. Army. Look at this. I think it was the early 70s, if I'm not mistaken. Could have been the 60s. I think it was the 60s. Anyhow, U.S. Army did a study on footwear, and they discovered the lighter the footwear was, the longer a soldier could march and the more weight they could carry. And if you read the whole paper, it's pretty intense. There's a lot there to look at. But they crunched the numbers, and as they lessened the weight on the foot, they kept increasing the weight on the soldier's back. And they found, again, as the footwear got lighter and lighter and lighter, the more weight they could carry for a greater distance with less fatigue and less of a loss of energy. That's a big deal. And if you think about it, our enemy, think about it like Vietnam, they were wearing sandals or sneakers. The Japanese mostly wore sneakers during World War II. Look at the people over in the sandbox over there, right? And over in the Middle East. A lot of them are just wearing sandals, running around, light clothes, right? Our guys, we're all running around with body armor, all this ammo, boots, the whole deal. Could be 100 pounds or more of gear without your pack. I don't want to get into what the packs weighed. And when I was in, I mean, we were still wearing this ridiculous hunk of crap. And the gear we were wearing was from World War II, Korea, Vietnam. It used to blow my mind, the gear we had. I remember we're out there in the field, and I'm like, why are we carrying these giant sleeping bags? I can go to a sporting goods store right now and buy a sleeping bag that'll do a better job that's a fraction of the weight. Thank God they changed that, and the modern gear today is a lot lighter. But there's been this augmentation. So, okay, the gear's lighter, but now you're carrying all the body armor. That weighs a ton. So, you know, the military is going to beat you up physically. I mean, depending on what your job is. I was infantry. So I was a security forces Marine. So I had to go through all that training, beating myself up first. But if you're admin or a cook or something, it's not as bad. But I'm just saying, when you're young, you're resilient, you can adapt, you can get through it. But all the damage that you're doing to your body is cumulative. You understand me? It's cumulative. It adds up over time. So yeah, this is just where I find myself now. I couldn't be happier with these. I'm gonna have another pair made. I just got off the phone with Chris. I'm thinking about a pair for the concrete or we could possibly go with a crepe sole, like you see on the old Clark's desert boots, like they wore in World War II. The British soldiers had that. That's a lot better. He hasn't done that yet, but he says he's open to doing it, so I'll probably get a pair of those at some point. And when I do, I'll let you guys know about that. I hope this helps. Chris's company is called Broadwinger. I'll give you a little brief thing on that. His dad is a falconer. The guy goes out in the woods and captures falcons, raises them, trains them, takes them out on his arm and goes hunting with them. That's nuts, man. That's super cool. So I drew up a real quick sketch for him for a logo, and I hope he uses it. Like hawk wings with a pair of his boots in the center, Broadwinger. It's just a super cool name, and he's a super cool guy, and I just stumbled upon him on Instagram, and I saw those boots, and I was like, my God, that's exactly what I had in my mind. I don't have to make them myself. I don't have to figure this out. All I can do is call that guy. As a matter of fact, I made a comment on an Instagram photo that he posted. Less than an hour, he had commented back to me, and that started a conversation. And I think within a week of talking to him, I sent him a deposit, and he had a few boots to make ahead of me. I said, it's going to be a couple months. He goes, yeah, probably. And I got a friend that's taken over a year. He still doesn't have his boots, from another guy. And when Chris was done with the boots that he had in the line ahead of me, he got these knocked out, and it took him about a week to make these boots. And here they are, and they're perfect. That's amazing to me. So, not for everybody. I understand that. I'm not trying to push you to get this. I'm just telling you, again, this was my problem. This is what I went through. And here I am. The Lems are pretty good. As a matter of fact, if you're having the issues, you don't just jump to a custom pair of boots. I would say if you want to save money, go to Lems, get a pair of these, put them on, see how they feel, wear them around for a while. You can't jump from this, or this, or this, or this, to this, or this, because your body has to get used to it. Your body has to get used to those muscles in the back. Your legs have to get lengthened. You have to learn how to re-walk again. It changes everything. When you're running, you can't be driving your heels into the ground anymore. You're going to change how you run. You're going to be running, and you're going to be landing more flat foot when you run, or you're going to just flat and roll, or you're going to be running up on the balls of your feet. That's what you're supposed to do. By the way, look at the long distance runners and the guys that win. Most of them are coming out of Africa. They're running barefoot or with a sandal on. Look at how their feet hit the ground. Do that. Get outside, walk in the grass, walk on the beach. Do it. Grounding is a thing. Now, you're not grounding with these, right? Because the rubber here is insulating you from the ground. But grounding is a real thing. You should get outside, barefoot, as often as you can, on the ground. There's an electrical thing happening with the earth and the human body and all that. That's all real. People that live at the beach that look healthy and they got a tan, they almost seem like they never get sick. They don't have any major body issues. You know why? Because they're running around barefoot on the sand all the time. They're jumping in and out of the ocean all the time. They're living a healthy lifestyle. That's what you got to be doing. So I hope this helps. For one thing, it's telling you why I'm wearing such a goofy looking shoe. Now you understand that. But I wanted to get my journey across to you, because I think there's probably, I don't know if thousands of you are even going to watch this video, but if you are, you've gone through the same thing. That's why you're watching this video. Why do I have back pain? Why do my knees hurt? Why do my legs hurt? Why am I so fatigued? Probably the friggin' shoes you got on your body. That's why. That's why. This is 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 definitely why. Barefoot shoes. Start off with some sneakers. And by the way, those of you that don't have a wide toe box, again, you can just get these and it'll probably just change your life. So that's it for now. Have a great day. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got something out of it. And I don't know what else to tell you. What a mess here, huh? I'm wearing my Ugg boots right now, actually. Super comfy. I'm going to take them off, put my socks on, put these back on, and work on the van next. Until next time. Broadwinger boots, man. I'm digging them. You know the best thing about a tan? You can't see the bags under my eyes from not sleeping for the last